I sense that he was trying to make science more open-minded, less dogmatic,
Less dogmatic.
and he was trying to get scientists to say, okay, so you don't like this theory and you like that theory. So that doesn't mean you should let go of this theory because
Of either of them. Of either of them.
it's yes, it's what?
But both of them have their value and their perspective. They can describe reality as a whole from a different angle.
Yes, each theory is what is
Not completely right and not completely wrong.
each theory is like a representation of reality because you can't uh, say that a theory is reality. Each theory is a
Uh,
representation. Is our is
Very good. So,
is our a helpful image or whatever
right.
to
Yeah,
help us understand reality, to help us use reality, to help mankind deal with reality. But it's not reality, so we should
itself.
the a theory with reality and say, okay, this is the best reality. So we should erase all the other
That is correct. That is correct. So
uh,
you got it.
all realities, even the reality, the theory of that the Earth is flat. That could be considered a reality that works for
A very short
I
distance.
can see.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
works for us. So
That's right. The Earth is flat as far as you're concerned. If you only look at the 100 square feet.
even in the early Buddhist or there's the practice of offering the world to the Buddhas, and it imagines the reality or the earth as something like a flat table, and there's things on top of it and things underneath it.
Right.
The
So
people-
you got the gist of it for sure. But one thing that I really liked about that was precisely that openness. That what I call quite often anymore perspectivism. Because one of the problems that the human mind has in understanding reality is a narrow scope. So if we look at things too closely, too narrowly, we miss the big picture, and then we make decisions that are inappropriate. We get all uptight. We don't have this flexibility of perspective. Um, the so that's the first thing. Relax. It is what it is. Reality is what it is. Let's look at it from a distance. Let's not get too close to it because then we get the tanha, the thirst feeling for being a non-being, for the sensory. We get too attached to our sensory impressions, and we are not able to detach. In French, they say prendre du recul, to step back, to look at reality and be able to study it in all its wholeness, in oneness, in its integrity. So when we do that, we're able to better, I would say, deliberate, better think, better cognate, and not make mistakes with our emotions and impulses. So this anti-dogmatism, this push towards perspectivism, openness, flexibility of views, is something that I really right away connected. I connected with. It is very reminiscent of E.O. Wilson, who talks about consilience. Um, I always mention it because he says that one cannot know anything uh, from only one perspective. In order to know something very well, you have to use a variety of different perspectives and sciences, different angles, so you know it well, you understand it fully. So in that regard, I was already making the parallel. So openness of views, this diversification of your perspectives in understanding anything in this universe that is infinite and eternal. So I found it extremely refreshing. Now we have to understand too that this Boltzmann guy, was under a lot of duress because he had it clear in his mind that the universe was made of tiny atoms, and that went against the pervading scientific view that the universe was energy, but it was not quantized. So he had a very big battle because in his mind he was absolutely convinced that gases, for example, which was his big stuff, were composed of very tiny particles, molecules. And atoms, I don't know if he knew the distinction between atoms and molecules. I don't know. I haven't studied enough in that. But he knew that things were broken down into individual little particles. And he hypothesized that the temperature of a gas in a specific place was directly due to the kinetic energy of each one of the particles. And he did averages and computations, and he came to the conclusion that within a certain volume, with a certain amount of molecules flying around or moving around the space, it would be determining the pressure, the temperature, and he could compute the average speed of movement of a molecule in the air, and the speeds are staggering at the room temperature. I just read this morning that a a molecule of nitrogen travels at 900 and something feet per second, or something crazy. I mean, extremely high speeds on an average. And of course, because they're so small, when they impact us, because right now there's air molecules impacting on my skin, they are so small that we only feel the average kinetic energy of the whole trillions of molecules flying around us, and uh, that average of that kinetic energy gives the temperature of the room at the given pressure. That's the, that is phenomenal. A hundred and some years ago, this guy was already in his mind understanding this dynamic play of molecules and particles, and everybody was looking at it like he was absolutely crazy.
Oh, you mentioned consilience, the unit of
Yes,
knowledge by a Edward Osborne Wilson.
yes.
Why why do you find that book valuable to your view of how to deal with reality?
I discovered Wilson after I had spent a lot of time studying by myself um, the issues or ideas or questions about life and what should I do, how should I live, how should I feel, what is the right thing, what is the wrong thing, what is practical, what is not. And I had been spending quite a bit of time reading. I started reading the different spiritual Bibles, and then I read many philosophers, and then I ended up discovering Buddhism, the Dharma or Dhamma, and I started making my own world vision. I discovered that I needed to precisely understand statements or conclusions from other thinkers with a very open perspective, because some of the things that I read made no sense whatsoever at the beginning. And then as I changed my views or my perspectives, I could find sense in them, but only from that perspective. So what doesn't make any sense from perspective A makes a heck of a lot of sense from perspective Z. So if you use A and Z, then you are able to see a concept, an idea, a belief, or a feeling, or truth much better. Because you can say, yes, this is this truth that we're talking about, but this truth from this angle makes a lot of sense. From this angle doesn't make any sense. So it helps you make your thinking dynamic. And after I had come to this conclusion, I bumped on this, the Wilson, E.O. Wilson, that says, that kind of coined the term consilience, which is to use a priori very different sciences like physics and psychology, for example, two completely different sciences, physics and psychology. One just measures what is, the other one measures how we feel, how we think about what is. And in the combination of two apparently absolutely different sciences that have nothing to do with each other, when you can find consilience between them, then you understand any idea or conception or term that is pinned between them. And what he wrote a book in which he has a little diagram, and it has a point in the middle. It has like a square with 4 subsquares, and in the middle there is a concept, an idea, or something that we're discussing, and then each one of the squares is different sciences, like I don't know, climate science, economics, physics, and psychology, or something like that. And he says that the more we go closer to the theme at hand, the less each one of the sciences is involved in it. It's just like, what is in psychology does not pertain to physics. But as you go wider in your understanding, and you go wider in your perspective, all of a sudden the same point that you are analyzing now is involved in both sciences. You're able to kind of bounce off, from the physical point, from the psychological point, from the climate science point, from the economics point, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm trying to look for a word that describes that's used more in politics. Something that when Barack Obama became president, he was trying to make it his an effort of going across the aisle and bringing them in. What is that called? Or you?
There is a word in politics that they use that is, it will come back, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Or you're trying to bring them in and not necessarily negotiate.
It's funny, no, because it's a word, when you hear it, it makes it sound like you do not cooperate on both sides of the aisle, but that's what it is. It is talking about using both sides of the aisle to create or generate a policy or a change in the law.
But then the problem is, then your constituent or people looking back in history and says, "Oh, he went on their side and didn't."
That's right.
For what we wanted, and
that's right. That's right.
But in science and in what?
Well, I would say that a good word to use other than consilience that people typically haven't bumped against, or they haven't studied it, or they don't understand it very well. We could use the word a super perspective, like an omni perspective. So looking at any phenomenon from an array of different perspectives.
Well, there's a definition in a dictionary for consilience. It says agreement between the approaches to a topic of different academic subjects. So you're agreeing, looking at all the different approaches, all the different academic sciences, and trying to come to some agreement, especially in science and humanities. And it sounds like from the article Boltzmann's concept of reality, that he was trying to do that because yeah, imagine at that time, that was before Einstein theory of reality, and maybe ideas of the what is it, quantum and other things they were starting to think about. And so maybe they were arguing, there were philosophers versus scientists. Well, philosophers that were involved in science were promoting that that there shouldn't be atoms, and then scientists that were using data were trying to show that there are atoms as things. And maybe this Boltzmann was trying to do some kind of consilience.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. That's why I think that he
To
didn't use
tell,
that word, but he
trying to
was
tell
talking
the,
exactly about that.
he was trying to tell the philosophers, scientists, I guess the idealist kind of scientist versus the realist kind of scientist. Like the realist kind of scientists were promoting that atoms do exist as inherently existent objects, and idealist kind of scientists were trying to say no, there's no such thing as atoms, or maybe it's just energy or something else, right? And so he was trying to come to or trying to satisfy both sides. He was trying to say that okay, you idealists, go ahead and continue that way, but think of, oh, you're back. Oh, I have to click on admit. Yeah, the Boltzmann was trying to tell the idealist philosopher scientist to not get stuck on that there isn't atoms, but to treat the idea of atoms as a model that will help deal with experiments, and go ahead and continue not having to believe, but just treat it as a model, a representation perhaps that might work in running experiments. And then and that maybe that was kind of his consilience, or to try to bring the other side in. He went across the aisle. Oh, I forgot, or I'm still having. Oh, you're muted. Or maybe I have to unmute you. Let's see.
Sorry, I was.
Oh, now I muted you. Same
No,
thing.
I'm sorry. I disconnected without, I didn't do it on purpose. And then when I came in, but I was going to say that the partisan is the word that they use in
Yeah.
politics, a partisan effort. So basically two opposite poles in politics that make an effort together. But it's partisan because each party has their own thing. So, but they come together. So partisan to me sounds like uncooperative, only from one side, from one party. But partisan effort is when they both work together across the aisle. So
Yeah, so Boltzmann was trying to work across the aisle to bring the idealist philosopher scientists over to the idea that okay, so don't accept that atoms exist, but at least treat it as a model, as a theory. And so maybe that's why he went into,
as a workable perspective,
yeah, to treating theories not as real, but as
dogmas,
models,
right?
As representations, as a
What I find so beautiful in this kind of thinking, whether it is from Boltzmann or from Wilson in this case, is that in my own personal experience, after spending a lot of time thinking about different ideas, problems, objects, phenomena, I came to the conclusion that the application of consilience or partisanship in our own representation of life, because you and I are not scientists, so but we still deal with reality just like scientists do, but scientists do deal with reality with very specific items, topics. I want to know what the temperature is doing, why when I put my hand in a hot pot do I get burned, what is happening there. So they're very specific in what they analyze. But you and I, we deal with reality in a heuristic kind of way. Let's make it simple. Let's not complicate ourselves much. If it feels good, if it's okay, if I'm okay with that, that's what I understand. That's what I decide, and that's the way I live. So we are, in a way, amateur scientists representing reality, maybe not with formulas, but you could say that our behavior, our conduct, our life, the way we behave, our character, the way we interact with things and people are our formulas, unscientific formulas to represent what is, which is reality as a whole. And my discovery has been that if I use this kind of approach, the Boltzmann approach or the Wilson approach, in the way I look at my cup of coffee, or the way I drink coffee, or the way I talk to you, the way I position my light, the way I eat, the way I sleep, the way I go to work, the way I buy groceries at the store, the way I drive on I-4, all that, this openness of, okay, let's consider the following and look at it from different perspectives, it brings on phronesis, the Greek word for practical wisdom, which then reverts, remember the trickle-down wisdom, this practical wisdom reverts into all the pyramid of the Maslow's pyramid that goes down all the way down to what I eat, who I live with, how I conduct myself, if I watch TV or I don't watch TV, if I spend my time doing one thing or the other, if I do exercise or don't exercise, if I become a vegan versus a meat eater, et cetera, et cetera. So all that has been, I can confirm in my own life.
Welcome, Mike. Unmute yourself. He's outside.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Mike.
How are you?
We are living science fiction.
Are you in Chicago or something like that?
I'm in Chicago.
Wow.
It looks nice.
Nice background, by the way. Nice background. Look at that. There's a beautiful tree.
Are you on a phone or something?
I'm on my deck. My deck.
On your deck. That's your backyard?
Yeah.
Are you using a laptop?
Yep. Actually an iPad.
An iPad. Oh, that's
well. It's. I'm glad that you.
Thanks for inviting. Thank you for inviting.
I'm very glad that you could join. That you could get on this one. This one is a good. We started just a few minutes ago. Jairo and myself. Jairo is hosting. I have invited Francisco, but it hasn't shown up yet, and David Norton, who has been present previously, I don't think he's going to make it today. I don't know why, but we are talking about a beautiful idea. I think I shared it with you yesterday. This short writing about the Boltzmann concept of reality. Boltzmann was a 19th century physicist and mathematician. He became very, very famous. He had a very tough time in his life. As a matter of fact, he committed suicide when he was 60 little. He had bouts of depression and everything, but he was a genius. The guy was a genius, and he was one of the first physicists to have the intuition that reality was made of tiny little particles. So particles, atoms, molecules, et cetera, and of course, at the time, he was way ahead of his time. So of course, he suffered for it. He was ridiculed. He had a lot of opposition, And he had a very tough time. He had a very tough time because for most of his life, in the academic world, although he was recognized as a freaking genius, his most fundamental ideas about the nature of reality, which is what us guys talk about most of the time in non-scientific terms, more into philosophical and psychological terms. He had a very, very big opposition, was never recognized until his death. And then, lo and behold, right after his death, Planck himself, Max Planck, recognized him as a freaking genius, and he said, yes, he was right all along. That's the way, the quantum nature of reality. He was already intuiting that. But what I was interested in, and I kind of studied, is character.
Luis, I'm so sorry. I've got the dog is barking and it's waking up neighbors. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I hate to interrupt.
Oh, wonder if I could. No, I can't. I'm gonna try to call. I'm gonna try to call Rami. Let's see if I can call Rami or David. Let's see.
So I will continue what you and I were talking about, which is that it is my personal experience. Oh, you're back. So I discovered this little essay. In non-scientific language, and the ideas of Planck, of Boltzmann, I'm sorry, and he, even shared some of his writings. And in them, I immediately saw a lot of myself or my ideas, not in scientific terms, but in philosophical terms. And one of the most important things, and Jairo agreed with me, that he talks about openness of mind. He talks about getting away from dogmatism. He talks about how every physical, every theory, scientific theory, is a representation of reality, which is, what is the real is that, and then we kind of represent ourselves that reality, and then we try to make sense of it. So I immediately felt very comfortable with that because, and you and I have discussed Wilson, E.O. Wilson, and consilience, that is looking at any phenomenon. And when I say phenomenon, I'm talking about an object or an idea, because an idea is a phenomenon, or a feeling, or an emotion, or anything, and look at it from a super perspective, which includes many different angles and sciences. And a fact can be analyzed from many different ways. And the more ways you look at it, the different angles you look at it, the more open-minded you are, and you better understand it. So I felt. Sorry?
Question. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Unless you want to continue.
No. That was it. Go ahead.
So what is these aspects of reality? The aspects of reality that the model that you're describing, so that there are many different. So to be open-minded, meaning that there are many different aspects of reality.
There are many different ways to look at the different aspects of reality.
But there's only one?
Well, there's only one reality. Obviously, the same tree that is behind you, we look at the same tree. There's one tree there. Now, what we feel about the tree, how we think about it, how we analyze it, is it good, is it bad, is it beautiful, is it ugly, what is it made of, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the different representations. Sure. Exactly. Of what is behind you.
So, for example, a biologist, a physicist, a painter, an impressionist, completely different.
And a psychologist and a philosopher and everything.
This reminds
Yes.
me of the fable of the elephant and the three blind men. So one is feeling
Absolutely.
the trunk and sees a snake. The other one's feeling the tail, sees a horse, and the other is feeling the leg and the ear and thinks it's a tree.
That's a very good,
Is it
very
same?
good imagery. It's the same thing, and you make it very clear right there that if you only focus on one perspective of that phenomenon, you miss out on the big picture, and you make decisions, and you do actions that are flawed because you don't realize you're dealing with an elephant. You think you're dealing with, I don't know, a piece of rope with hair at the end.
Now, the interesting part of that is if the three men were to
That
be able to communicate with one another as we are, they would understand by putting these pieces together that this, in fact, is an elephant.
absolutely beautiful analogy, because as you are saying, three men together looking at an elephant see the elephant much better than one man. So now I take this further. If I can look at reality, the whole of reality, life, as you and as Jairo and as myself and as Francisco and as David and the other guy and the other guy, my perspective becomes almost universal. So I take everybody's theory as mine, I'm representing, talking about. So I become a multi-mind in analyzing an object. So your imagery is very, very good, Mike.
This is very interesting, and I think this is also patterned in nature. It's patterned in terms of anthropology and archaeology. For example, if we look at a Mayan ruin in the Yucatan Peninsula, we see that the same type of architecture that was being formulated in Egypt, for example, and it's that idea of perhaps the way that we evolve as human beings. After all, we do all come from Africa. So there is we come from one particular biology, one shared biology. So it's very interesting to me, and it's always interesting that our family from Africa, where are you from? Well, my family's from Africa. Who are you? And that's very interesting to me. But anyway, so we disperse throughout the world, and we come up with the same. Somehow that idea is spawning from this conversation. I'm not sure why, if that's making any sense.
But that's no. It makes a hell of a lot of sense, because you can take that same string of thought, and you can go back to before we were we.
Mm.
When did man become man? We always talk about was the egg or was the egg or the chicken first? Well, I can say, when did the egg become an egg? When did the chicken become a chicken? And wasn't there like a range of becoming?
Mm-hmm.
Before the chicken was a chicken? It was a pre-chicken, a pre-chicken, a pre-pre. That didn't look like a chicken, but it was a chicken in formation. So we can take your analogy back to the beginning of time, which has no beginning. So we are the expression of reality, again, looking at itself.
It's fascinating.
So
exactly.
The wider we go, the more different perspectives, the more different slants and angles we use in analyzing anything, any aspect of reality, the more it brings lucidity, clairvoyance, in a sense. And I feel that there's a book that says Many Lives, Many Masters. I believe that it's many lives and many minds for a super omniscience. So this open-mindedness is what frees the human consciousness to truly understand the world, i.e., to truly understand itself. And from that understanding comes the cessation of suffering. It's like, oh, I got this. So that's my experience.
I knew you were going to text me, by the way, this morning. I wasn't going to bring it up. Well, I knew that, and I'm not, trust me, I'm scientific based, but I was thinking, I was just about to, I was hoping that you would, because I have a little bit of time this morning. This is not me bringing this up because I want to impress Jairo and Luis.
Yeah.
I'm simply saying that when I saw the text come through, and I know that maybe that's not a supernatural, but maybe does that have anything to do with what you're describing?
Well,
because I knew that you were going to. I was just about to contact you because I was hoping that we could do a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
And because it was the right moment. Now that I'm here, I'm like, this is so enjoyable.
It is very enjoyable, and I think I just beat you to the punch. It was going to happen no matter what.
Anyway.
It just didn't happen the way you thought it was going to happen, which was you calling us instead of us calling you.
It's interesting because you're bringing up so many interesting things. The cognitive revolution that we talked about, they say happened something like 80,000 years ago, and we find it in Spain, and we find it in France, right? With the artwork. The cognitive revolution, meaning your question is, when did man become man? Well, we have to ask ourselves, how do you define man?
That's right.
And, so it's this idea of, and we talked a little bit about this, Jairo, which is the mythology behind the Garden of Eden, which is this idea of being at one with everything and being at peace. And then there's this idea of wisdom or knowledge that our minds have evolved into, and then it's this idea of self. And this would be the cognitive revolution. There are three major revolutions that are understood. Cognitive revolution about 70,000 years ago, the Industrial Revolution, which was not the Industrial Revolution, the Agricultural Revolution, which was about 15,000 years ago. And then an Information Revolution, which would have happened with who was it, Guggenheim, with the printing press?
Yeah.
Those are the
boom, data, the communication revolution. Yeah.
The boom, boom, boom. And
the internet of the 15th century or something like that.
I don't know,
being able to print a book.
So what's next? What's the next revolution?
They say that
something like AI.
Yes,
it's embedded, or that it's just everywhere. The Internet of Things is just everywhere, and with 5G connecting everything, you could even have a chip in a pen and just in your eyeglasses. There's Google Glass that didn't catch on. Maybe it will eventually, or something like it.
Mm-hmm.
Where you can get information by looking in your.
I think you're onto something.
The answer to your question, from my perspective, Mike, the revolution for me, individually, has consisted in the following: that there are two kinds of knowledge, the conventional knowledge and the non-conventional knowledge. That non-conventional knowledge, which is precisely a super perspectivism of looking at any object, any knowledge, anything from a omniscient kind of perspective, is fed by actually conventional knowledge. So it's like the 1970s lamps. Those lamps with the bubbles. I don't know the name of them.
Sure, what the fuck?
Lava lamps.
Pavo, yeah.
Lava lamps. So you have.
I did too many drugs. I forgot the looking at lava lamps.
But so that is reality. So you are looking at reality. In a lava lamp, you're looking at reality. Every bubble is a universe. Let's put it that way. It's a universe, like our universe, that comes into being and fizzles out, but doesn't go anywhere. It's still in the same lamp. It's same reality. So you look in the lava lamp is a good representation of reality, the whole universe. Within the universe, you have bubbles of reality, sub-realities, which would be one of those yellow bubbles would be our universe. That's in expansion. It has a certain time span of 15 billion years, and then it may fizzle out, but it's going to come back. It's going to come back from the bottom. It didn't even go anywhere. It was still in the lamp, you know. So that's the circular, the yin-yang, the never-ending circle of being and non-being, the rebirth, you know, that they talk about in Buddhism. But how can you call that rebirth? You didn't even go anywhere. You just, you know, you were not phenomenal for a while, and then you became phenomenal. But your noumenal nature was inside that reality. So this is, to me, the more I study, the more I find Boltzmann or Planck or anything, any idea, Buddha, the Dharma, the Vedas, you and I talking about life and work and, you know, salesmanship, et cetera, et cetera. The more you have conventional knowledge.
We have a friend, Ken, joining us. Hey, Ken, thanks for joining us.
Unmute him.
Oh, he's muted. I think.
You have the power. You have the power, Jairo. You're all powerful.
Am I supposed to? I'm going to stop sharing the lava lamp.
Nice. Very cool. I was listening to some Tibetan music, Tibetan bells.
Oh, nice, nice.
Fire. Can you unmute yourself, Ken? Yes.
And
welcome, Ken.
Thanks.
Oh,
just
Ken's an alternate version of Mike. Without the glasses.
I just got a haircut, so you know, I was
similar aspects like of the same reality.
Wonderful.
That's it. That's it. Both sides of the same coin. Good morning.
Good
morning.
That's good. Good morning, Ken.
You got a little bit more hair than I do.
I don't know.
It's very close. It's a close match.
It's interesting. We were just talking about the one. I come from Africa, like we all do. My family comes from Africa. They left a couple 100,000 years ago, maybe 100,000 years ago. I'm not sure. And it's good to see you. This is a family reunion.
So I'm saying, Eve theory, mitochondrial DNA, doesn't lie.
This idea of every time we see one another, I haven't seen you in a while.
At least in this reality, or this life.
That's it.
Oh.
You just have amnesia.
That's right.
Up until knowledge is received, that's true.
I just said we were trying to figure out, because Jairo had a lava lamp on, just as you were before you came in, Ken. And Luis said, what is that thing that they did in the 70s with the bubbles and everything? And I couldn't remember it because I did way too many drugs looking at lava lamp.
You were inside the lava lamp, Mike.
But I forgot what it's called.
So when you're inside, you can't see it. That's the problem.
We're all lava lamps.
Amnesia.
All right. So now we have all four of us. Who wants to summarize? Who wants to summarize the subject of the day? We've been at it for about 50 or 40 some minutes. So who wants to summarize the subject of the day? maybe Jairo, you're hosting, so go at it.
Yes, it reminds me of politics and bipartisanship and walking across the aisle to try to get I'm looking for another word, but you know what it's like. And but this in this case it was happening in the early 1900s or maybe before, when there's some were trying to promote the atomic theory, and others were trying to be more idealistic, perhaps. And so Boltzmann was more in favor of the atomic theory, but he didn't want to make it like, okay, this is the fact, this is the way reality is. He was trying to walk across the aisle and get the idealist to see it his way by saying this is just a theory, just a representation, and so don't take it so literally, but see the benefit and see that it could be useful. That's what he was trying to do, I think.
Well, if I may interrupt, what is the subject of the day?
The subject of the day, maybe I'll summarize it real quick. We were talking about perspectivism, meaning how we individually represent life to ourselves and others when we talk about it and we share. And Boltzmann was very good in that sense, although he was a scientist. He was proposing that science represents reality in terms of formulas or theories, and because he had so much conflict with other scientists that said no, life is not made of atoms, because at the time it was way ahead of his time. He said, let's not be so dogmatic. Let's agree to disagree. And let's use different theories and different formulas to describe the same concept or the same phenomenon from different perspectives. And I found it very interesting. That's why I asked Jairo to make that the subject of the conversation, because you, Jairo, Mike, and I are like scientists, non-scientists. We are looking at reality, we're living reality, we're representing reality to ourselves to a certain degree, better or worse or whatever. And the more flexible our views about reality become, the better we can understand it. And the better we understand reality, the better we harmonize with reality. The better we're able to cope driving on I-4. The better we are able to cope with a nasty boss, the better we're able to cope with a difficult partner or a difficult neighborhood or a difficult society. So the more flexible we are in understanding what we see as reality, the better we can harmonize with it, manage our lives, and become less aggravated.
It's interesting. Right, but when I like I said, when we're talking about different perspectives, we're talking basically about different branches of the same tree, correct?
Correct.
And
different sciences, yes.
That being said, when you look at it, when you bring up science, you know, a lot of your words like flexibility and stuff like that does not apply in science. Science is not about being flexible. Science is about fact and what is quantifiable and what is proven. That is both its strength and its weakness, as far as I see it, because where matter ends, science is useless. That's what all about. Science is man's mechanism to understand the world around him, the world that he perceives through his senses. You see? So to really understand, to go where you're going, or go where was it, Boltzmann and Tesla, where they were going, they were beyond the senses. Hawking was like that too.
Yeah.
So a lot of us, so in order to really understand the world around you, you've got to understand your place in that world around you. So by understanding yourself, it's like, you know what, I always like it is, I always use this example in my classes. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, that album. If you look at the cover of that album, it's got the prism, and it's got the one light coming in, and it's got the rainbow coming out. Okay, now that rainbow coming out are not different lights. They're all aspects of the one light. So by understanding that one light, the aspects themselves fall into place. You don't have to understand the red chakra, the yellow chakra, the orange. You have to understand each of them. You just understand the one light that's providing it all. You see? So that one light, that one point is you yourself. So by understanding yourself, all of these other stuff that you're talking about falling into place will all fall into place by itself if you understand who you are and what you're about.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. So talk about perspective too.
Absolutely, that's exactly what this is about.
When you listen to Dark Side of the Moon with headphones, wow.
Yeah.
Dude.
I still do.
I mean, it is, you know, and that's a completely different experience than you're missing out on some things.
Oh yeah.
In terms of,
I still glean insight from that album.
It's fantastic. It's unbelievable. Yeah, I listened to it last week with headphones on. Fantastic.
Great album. They have a lot. Now the other one, I've always followed and fell into Tesla because I finally understood the concepts of what he was talking about, understanding reality through 3s, 6s, and 9s. A lot of people that throws them off. But you know, in meditation and in preaching, as I usually get these kind of you know, I don't want to call them revelations, but I kind of get downloads, and I understood the concept of what he was talking about.
Insights.
6s, exactly. 3s, 6s, and 9s. Now 3s, of course, is energy. That's what he's talking about. Proton, neutron, electron. That's represented in spirituality as Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Hinduism, generator, operator, destroyer, Native American, sun, earth, moon. So these are all representations of energy. And then energy that coalesces, it coalesces in the gas, it coalesces in the stars, it coalesces in the planets. Sometimes they further and coalesces into actual life. Those are the 6s. So when he's talking about 3s and 6s, he's talking about energy to matter, to existence. And then the 9s is the totality of that entire creation. Because if you look at a spiral galaxy from the center around, and it always goes around, it looks like a whirlpool, but if you look at it, it's a 9. Understand? It's a 9. So when he was talking about understanding, if you understand the concepts of 3s, 6s, and 9s, he was telling you that the nature of existence as it is in this moment. That's what he was talking about.
No argument again. So yes, there is what is, which is reality, it, and there is what emerges from reality, which is knowledge regarding itself. Because we are not other than reality, we're just an aspect of reality. Knowledge is an aspect of reality. So basically, no matter how you paint it, no matter what you see, whether you see a 3, a 6, a 9, or a 4.5, or whatever it is, it's always what is looking at itself through knowledge, consciousness, representation. So what is represents itself through consciousness with a certain degree of clarity. So for example, if we pick a mosquito, through a mosquito, reality sees itself with limited, to our knowledge, because we don't know how the mosquito thinks, but you know, based on behavior and conduct and stuff and patterns, it's kind of limited. Reality sees itself with a certain degree of clarity in the case of a mosquito or the leaf of a tree or an electron or a string through the vibration of emptiness or nothingness. So reality sees itself with a certain degree of clarity through any of its parts. So the whole sees itself through its aspects with a certain degree of clarity. And if the clarity is so infinite that you can consider the aspect a superconductor of the object itself, the noumenon, reality as a whole, then that's when you can call, you know, the enlightenment of the insight, you know, the reality sees itself and goes, ah, that's what I am. So that eureka moment, the lion's roar of Buddha when he went, okay, I got this through the meditation, the insight meditation that he did. He understood the Four Noble Truths, the three characteristics, impermanence, stress, and non-being or no self, or in fact, what do you call that? Emptiness in Chinese, sunyata, etc., etc. The moment that reality is, or the point, the wormhole of consciousness through which reality is able to go from being everything, pure existing, pure being, to a consciousness that is based on its own physicality, because you need a brain to think. Reality does not know it exists directly. It only knows it exists through its aspectual quality, which is phenomena. Whether they are physical, we call physical, mental, spiritual, energy, or whatever it is. So we are the tool. You, Ken, Mike, Jairo, myself, the mosquito, and anything phenomenal is potentially the tool through which reality is able to see itself fully. So this over here, this representation of 3 6s and 9s, whether we're looking at a galaxy, we're looking at a string, or we're thinking about ethics, aesthetics, or the inequalities of the world, whatever it is reality looking at itself, trying, not even trying, because it doesn't know it's trying. It's the moment that that a consciousness goes, oh, this is reality thinking about itself. That's when this mistaken identity disappears, and reality starts looking at itself with a high degree of precision and clarity.
That's interesting. I'm for some reason, anytime we're talking about this subject, I think of I was married for over 20 years and divorced, and part of my issue was I considered weeds that grew out of the ground, and I considered them plants, and so I didn't poison them, and I would let them grow incredibly. This would disturb my ex-wife very much. It was not a good thing to do, but I think I did it. I think I also did it as a probably anyway. But some of these weeds would grow so tall that they would flower. And this idea that you're talking about, Luis, this idea of reality and cognition, and we were talking about the cognition revolution, this idea of I am me, I am self, this understanding that takes place. It's a phenomenal trip to be here. And anyway, it's art. It's a drama. It's a fantastic song. We were just talking about Pink Floyd and this idea of the dance. Ken, you talked about the galaxy and the spiral and the 9. What a wonderful, beautiful dance that is that we're doing all at once.
In this reality and the others that have existed before and the ones that are coming up. So it's all happening now at the same time. So this dance is something we've done before. The only thing that changes is our memories of it. That's it. Nothing more. This is why people like you, when you really look at somebody who understands these concepts, they don't worry about anything. They don't even worry about food on the table. They don't worry about bills. When I was in India, there was some who didn't even wear clothes. They wanted no attachments. They just came out only because they had to eat and beg for food and go back into the caves and meditate. That's it. That's all they did. And I was like, whoa, I've seen these guys. They come out with these beads to cover themselves up. Obviously, they come out, they do their begging, and right back up into the hills, into the caves, and nobody sees them for 23 hours. And then they come out, and if they're drawn to you, or if you're and if you give them a little food, they will give you their teachings, the benefit of their knowledge. And I don't know. It's like the same thing happened to me when I was in Japan. I I don't know if it's because I had so much I was in the Marines. I was, 21. So my sobriety was non-existent for those 365 days, that, to say the least. And
Sure.
I remember having a conversation with this elder Japanese gentleman that was always in this park. They always, outside of these bases that we were at, that we had in Japan, they had these, what they call friendship parks, just little pocket parks that they would just put up there. And one thing I noticed is that these hobos, these homeless people, would move into these parks and they would take care of them. The bathrooms were spotless. You could go in there and eat food off the floor in these baths. These are public restrooms, and they are spotless. They clean the parks. If there's any trouble, they make sure, they act like police. They don't do anything. And I would always go staggering up the hill, because my base that I was at was on top of a hill, and I would be so drunk that I'd have to kind of take 5 minutes and sit there and catch my breath before I'm back up the hill. Well, there was always this group, and there was always this man I made eye contact with for like 6-7 months. And the month before I left, we finally kind of started talking. And it turns out that him and his whole group, this was back in the 80s, were World War II veterans, and they were samurai. And they were so disgruntled with with Japan surrendering and adopting Western ways that they broke their swords and turned their back on society. And it struck me. It was so deep how these guys were. They were so into the whole Bushido code. They really understood what it was, and they were like, it was better that they dropped 20 nukes than we lose our ways in who we are, which is why they did what they did. They dropped. I mean, that's when they turned their back. The symbolic meaning of that is them breaking their swords and turning, and that's exactly what they did. And the knowledge that they had, what they were talking about, they knew, was all the old world esoteric. Yeah. To me, it made no sense at the time. But now, as I reflect back on the conversations I had with them, he was like, he was the one that made me aware of the whole racial problem. And, I had rose-colored glasses. They're like, you're dark skinned. What are you doing in that country? This is what they do. He knew more of American history than I did.
This is beyond the sort of this Western pestilence that you describe that takes over a culture. I've heard it described as well that, for example, Alan Watts had a lecture on Japanese carpentry, and to be a Japanese carpenter, this is an ancient skill, and the way you described it, you'll have to, much better than I could, but essentially you need to start learning when you're 5 or 6. Well, that society has changed so much that, you go to school until you're 20 to be an insurance salesman, as the way Watts put it, and it's too late, because you needed to be with your father from the time you were 5 or 6, that whole time. Yeah. And the whole thing's lost. Very interesting story. What an experience.
I've never forgotten him. I've never forgotten that man. I never even asked his name. I don't know his name to this day. To this day. It was like one of those surreal moments, those aha moments. I had an aha moment before I realized I had an aha moment, But again, like I said, the alcohol was on the brain, that kind of thing, So I was like, I really wasn't about it. But the funny thing is, it was like a lucid dream. I remember every word of the conversations that we had, And it was just, I wonder what became of them. These guys, they were all very, very stoic. When they told me they were Japanese, I mean, I could see it then. They sat there cross-legged, like in lotus, backs straight, very lucid, very, very, they just watched life go by. That's it. That's all they did. That's all they did. Kind of like those men in India in the caves, just their own way of, like I said, perceiving the reality through their perspective. Amazing.
Ken, you said before you teach?
Excuse me?
You said before that you teach. Are you a teacher?
I teach high school, but I'm working with ESC kids right now.
SC.
And
special education.
Special ed.
Special needs. Okay.
Special needs kid. I teach at the high school level now, but now that's kind of gone and out of the way too. So it's like, I also do have my own spiritual discourses class that I do on I have like a little Facebook page, that kind of thing, you know?
Yes.
So
yes.
I give my satsangs once a week, that kind of thing. So you guys are more than welcome to come in if you guys want to. If you're on Facebook, you can join the school. May I say the school, Jairo?
Yes.
You've got an invite, you never accepted it.
Oh,
It's called the School of Inner Awareness and Meditation, or So I Am.
Interesting. I'll look at that. I'll look at that. So we're talking. We're all looking at, or we all have interest in this kind of non-conventional thinking, which is still thinking, but it's non-conventional, where instead of looking at things and the relationships between things, we look at through things, and through their relationships, we look at the nature or the essence of anything in any relationship, any group, or anything. So that is a perspective that is different. It's still a perspective, but it's different. And it's a combination of those two different ways of looking at things, which is a conventional one, because we're still talking about things in their relationships, and we're still talking about their essence. The only difference is that things in their aspect have a specific aspect, but the essence of anything, I propose, is the same one. All things are the same in essence. Now that essence is the quid. What is the essence of anything? What is the nature of any phenomenon? And
the soul.
even the nature, I'm sorry?
The soul.
Yeah, you can call that the soul, but of course that brings a lot of, I'm very careful when I talk, especially about abstract things or subtle things or things that are, you can't touch or see, like non-being, non-arising. And I'm very careful to define the word or the perspective from which I use the word. So soul, if you talk about soul, a lot of people are going to think is me, the non-material me, but it's still me. And or that some people talk about our individual soul, and then there's the universal soul, Brahman. So you start talking about, wait a minute. I mean,
well, they're one and the same. The universal soul and the individual, the perceived individual soul are one and the same.
Yes, they have different aspects. Yeah, I agree. So again, this is the conversation. This is our interest. We're trying to define the soul, right? The individual soul, the universal soul, the cosmic soul. What is that soul? What is it? How do you define that? Because that's
energy.
all.
Energy, pure energy.
Yes. Is so yes, you can talk about that too and say, okay, well, this is pure energy. The whole reality is pure energy.
Exactly.
But what is the nature? What is the soul of energy? What is the essence? How do I describe, in very general words, what is and how? What are the qualities of energy? For example, you can also, how do I describe the undescribable? Because if the essence of it, it's how do you describe the ineffable, the undescribable? And you can only
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you can only describe it by opposition, what it is not, that I can touch and feel and measure. So what is the quality? What is the very description of not? Because everything is not.
If it's everything, like you said earlier, if it's really everything and understanding itself from different aspects, then the real question is, what isn't it? So if it's everything, then that question is null and void, because it's everything. It's in one aspect of that. Now, in understanding it, it cannot be understood. Like I always talk about people trying to understand through the perspective of the mind and science. Remember, the mind is a three-dimensional object, I guess, if you want to call it, for lack of a better term. And what we're talking about are fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensional concepts. So in order to take a three-dimensional mind and try to understand a higher level concept requires a certain type of understanding, okay? Now, let me be clear on this. I liken this to having a 3G phone and trying to jump onto a 5G network. It just can't be. There has to be a bridge between the two. Therefore, to understand what it is that you're talking about cannot be quantified, cannot be spoken of, cannot be compartmentalized by a three-dimensional mind. It can be understood through direct experience of what it is that you're talking about, which is what happened to me when I went to India, when I had my third eye opened, you know, and everything became question, like what happened to Buddha. What Buddha understood when he had his aha moment was that everything he did, everything that he tried to understand was completely worthless. He didn't have to. When he was asked what enlightenment was, he just looked at the guy and he said, I'm awake, nothing more. Nothing more. All the other concepts and everything else was, you know, completely irrelevant to him. They were all different, you know, it's like trying to understand a tree one leaf at a time. You see, or trying to chop down a tree one branch at a time instead of the trunk. I like to use these kind of examples. It kind of simplifies them. It kind of makes it a little bit more. Sometimes it's a little too simple, but you know, for a lot of people, definitely can get for them to see what it is that I'm trying to convey. So, the direct experience, attaining that direct experience, is key to understanding what it is that you're talking about, what it is that you're trying to understand. So, for me, and I'm not saying that this is the way to do it. I'm not saying that, you know, to me, whatever resonates with an individual person, if that resonates true to their heart with them, whatever it is that they're pursuing is what they're supposed to be doing. I don't judge it. I don't condemn it. I do not say it's wrong. I say more power to you. Knock yourself out. Because there's something along that path that you need to learn in order to learn that, well, maybe I need to switch gears, I need to jump onto another path. The one thing I've understood is that the truth that we're looking for is all around us. Therefore, it is pathless. So to truly understand what is pathless, to compartmentalize yourself to a path is only going to take you further from truth.
That's what Luis Del Pino refers to as consilience.
Yeah, that's Krishnamurti too.
To bring in the different sciences, the different humanities. Trying to get out of your own science and try to focus on the object of focus or whatever, but use different fields to understand it better.
Modalities,
to be less dogmatic, to have an open mind and see what other specialists, how they view it, and not think of it all. No, there must be only one theory that should handle it. No, you should use all theories and see what.
Yeah.
It's like a big elephant, and we're all the six blind men, and we're touching different parts of the elephant, and we're saying, oh, this tail, oh, this is the rope. And that's what reality is.
What I've learned is that for some people, what you were just saying, they have that dogmatic view. And you know what? What I've learned is that although that does not resonate with me, it is okay for them. So more power to them. If they want to approach it with a ritualistic, dogmatic approach, as narrow as that is, then that's where they're supposed to be. I just don't judge it anymore. It just is what it is. Go for it. If that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. If that's how you understand the world around you, that's how I always used to I have this friend that I grew up with, you know, he always, a smart kid, and we're the same age, started kindergarten and everything. We stayed friends all these years. He's always would get these killer jobs, and he would always do well for himself, but he would always blow it because he struggled with addiction. And all these years, you know, I kept, you know, he over the years, it's always been this way. Well, about 6 or 7 years ago, he found Jesus and completely turned his life around. You know, he belongs to a very, to us would be a very narrow, dogmatic, ritualistic type of thing. But you know what? It works for him. And that's fine. And that's fine. People got to come into it on their own, which is why the old teachings always stress, work on your light, make your light shine brighter. Because when the darkness comes on those around you, they instinctively look for light.
There's not a lot of time. You got to get what you can get. I mean, in terms of this ride that we're on, I agree. I heard the Dalai Lama say that. He's like, look, if this is what you were raised in and this speaks to you, then continue down that path.
Exactly.
You know, there's not a lot of, I got sober in 2002, September 5th. That's my sobriety date. And this idea of the steps, this idea of an awakening, there's not a lot of time here. This is a short ride now, at least while I'm here, you know, while I'm enjoying this. So that's really my perspective as well. I mean, if you can, you know, wherever you're at right now, just, you know, open up your eyes. And so.
What is your name again?
Mike.
My twin? I'll tell you my twin. My brother from another mother. All right. Question. When you say, you know, I have a short time, you know, we only have like a short time here. When you say I, who are you talking about?
Mike. This experience, this ride.
Okay, but the soul is infinite, correct?
It's true. I get that, but you know, there's this idea, and you talk about energy. This idea of being able to absorb it. I still have that idea of that thirst or that craving, which we could talk a little bit about, but that sense of adventure, that energy that's driving me to be able to pull it in. You know, there's that aspect of nature, that wildness. So that's what I'm talking about. So
Ken,
when you talk about, excuse me, I heard my name.
Ken, I was gonna kind of go on to your question. You know, when you talk about I, who am I, and the soul is infinite and eternal, but the soul does not know in and of itself, or in and by itself. It doesn't know. It only knows through I, Mike, I, Ken, I, Louis, I, Mosquito, etc., with a certain degree of knowledge. So the soul, as pure being, does not know. We are the, and this is my view, we are the instrument, the tool through which the soul knows itself. And each knowledge is different, because each mind is born in a different place, has a different body, has different aspects, different history, different everything. But you see where I'm going with this. So when I say I don't have a lot of time, what Mike is saying is that the aspect of the soul which is eternal, aspectualized in Mike, has a determined time. See? So life looks at itself through holes, you know, and those holes are consciousness or aspects of itself, which can be a human consciousness, or it can be the doorbell on your door.
Yep. It's really good if that's, you know, again, if that's what works for you, that's fine. You see, my take on what you're saying, though, it's the opposite. It's the soul that has all the knowledge. The soul knows what it is. It's the mind that doesn't. So when you call yourself I, and call yourself I as part of the body, and relate to yourself in the body that you are, of course, you're not going to know, because you're coming from the perspective of mind.
Very good. The soul knows everything, or is everything, potentially. So the infinite knowledge is potential, but it is actualized not infinitely. It is actualized with a certain degree, which is a curve from zero, not knowing nothing, to infinity. So the soul being everything and nothing at the same time potentially has infinite knowledge. And of course, infinite time and space. It's everything. But because it is potential, it cannot know it but through its actualized self. I recommend reading the book by David Bohm, 1980s, 1970s physicist that spoke about the actualized reality and non-actualized reality. It's the same thing. And he speaks of reality as a hologram, where when you go small, the whole of reality is potentially in that tiny little thing. For example, in my case, in this body, in this mind, in this envelope of phenomena, atoms and stuff, the whole of reality is potentially in there. So if you cut me up in a trillion little pieces, and you take the tiniest piece of myself, which is a quantum, of energy, the whole of the whole of reality is there, potentially, not actualized. That's why in physics, when they go small, and they go into the string, they find out in their formulas that the energy of space, the empty space of nothing, of 0 Kelvin, is infinite. That's the soul that you're talking about is right there, potentially, not actualized. That's why the soul, in my
How
view,
does it actualize?
Because of the nature of reality is quantum. That means that 0 Kelvin only exists for a span of time of 10 to the minus 35 in a space of 10 to the minus 35, which is the Planck scale, where when you cut reality into the tiniest piece, you see the quantum, which is 0, becoming something, or a quantum, with a frequency and an energy that is indescribable to us. So reality,
and then it has a massive expansion, correct? A massive expansion.
It could have, with a certain probability, the 0 can expand. That's the inflationary cosmology you're mentioning there. That 0, which has a very tiny energy, the quantum energy, the energy of a quantum, expands, and with it, each energy of the quantum 0 becomes, bigger and bigger and bigger, and can, or does, I believe, at infinity and in eternity, become a bubble.
So it sounds like you're describing. It sounds like you're describing the Big Bang, or
the Big Bang
theory,
and the Big Bang being crunched.
Theory.
Yeah. Because in the Big Bang, the problem is that they don't have time before time. They say, okay, it's 0, there's nothing. But in my view, because reality must be everything and nothing, so it is eternal and infinite at the same time, there cannot be no time. So every time 0 Kelvin becomes a quantum, that's a world right there in and of itself. Now, how big or small, it doesn't matter, because it's already there potentially. The soul of the universe is
now remember,
infinite and eternal.
0, the definition of 0 is of having no meaning, but still holding a place. You see?
To me, 0 is infinite.
Yeah.
I mean, 0 is the aspectual one. In the scope of reality, 0 is just one aspect, and infinite is another aspect. So to me, 0 and 1 are the same. That's the quantum nature of things. 0 is 1, 1 is 0. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. I mean, in the Heart Sutra, that's the first thing. The first verse of the Heart Sutra is that.
Absolutely.
Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. And in that dipole, 0, 1, is the whole of the soul, the reality. And then you can kind of conceptualize what is 1. Is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the world that we see in its amplitude, in its incredible, 15 billion years worth of stars and galaxies, and us in there in the middle looking at it, is 1. And I mean, one can be very big, or very tiny, tiny. It can be a quantum. It can be a zero. So to me, the soul that you talk about, Brahman, is also Atman, is everything and nothing at the same time. But I insist, and this is my view, we can disagree on that, that the whole does not know itself fully, and only knows itself with a certain degree of clarity, which means that it knows itself just a little bit at the quantum level. You know, the string, which is a quantum of zero, the zero energizing itself into one with a very, very tiny time and span, lifetime and everything. It's almost virtual. They call it virtual particles. That is reality looking at itself with very little knowledge. And then you can put a lot of ones together, and you make a galaxy. And then within the galaxy, you have a planet. And then within a planet, you have something that becomes a brain. And then from the brain, from the complexity of that machine, self-awareness, happens. And then that self-awareness also is in a gradient of, am I a mosquito? Am I a primate? Am I an individual, a human? And then with each human consciousness, you have this kind of a transcendence, a thinking that leaves itself. In the Kula Sunyata Sutra of the Buddha, which is the Sutra on emptiness, he describes the different levels of knowledge within the human mind. That's the most complex consciousness that we know of. And he goes from the levels of meditations, the 7 jhanas, the concentrations and everything. And then in the last one, the mind looks at itself and goes, I am impermanent, I am stressful, and I am nothing. And that knowledge frees itself from itself. And that's where reality is able to, like a superconductor, look at itself and go, here I am that. Sam, I think the thing is. So basically, reality, when it leaves the mind behind, the same analogy of the boat going from one shore to the other is still the same thing. It's just that reality cannot leave itself because there's nowhere to go, because reality is everything and nothing. So it doesn't matter. It's the lamp, the lava lamp. The yellow thing does not leave. It's there. It disappears, appears, disappears, appears. So that's reality looking at itself. And when it sees itself as such through a consciousness, an enlightened consciousness, a Buddha mind, it just gets there and it goes, okay, I sit at ease looking at myself. I don't suffer anymore, because before that there was a lot of noise in the lens. But as the consciousness becomes clearer and clearer, becomes more transcendent, sees through itself, through its phenomenal aspects, then the soul sees itself clearly beyond its own thinking apparatus, which is Atman, the human consciousness. And that's when it just sits down and goes, that's me. I just saw myself fully through this enlightened mind. So it's a coming together, a wholeness of the whole, looking at the whole through its parts.
And that coming together, and I'm totally agreement. I don't disagree with anything you say. Trust me. Like I said, I don't disagree with what anybody believes or thinks and how they want to pursue it. I'm no problem with it. But what I'm saying is that consciousness that you get when you have that understanding is understanding what the soul has always known.
Potentially.
So
you actualize the potential. You actualize the potential knowledge, that infinite knowledge, which is transcendent. It has to be that when we talk about omniscience, it's not about knowing all the things. You cannot know all the things because each consciousness is in a place. So unless you use consilience and you use all the accumulated science of all the years of your, and you go deep into each science and you grab everything, you still have to go through knowledge, you know what I mean? The knowledge that goes through the knowledge for reality to actualize its own potential, which is indescribable.
If the vehicle that you're using to attain that is the mind, yes, that's exactly what you have to go.
Yes.
But you can bypass all of that by merging with the soul. Because what you're getting to, when you got to that 7th level, when you said, oh, now I really understand it, that's emergence with the soul. That's getting to understand what the soul has always known.
Well, the soul merging with itself, because there's no separation. There's only one soul.
So like I'm saying,
the mind is of the soul.
Pink Floyd, when I gave the analogy of Pink Floyd, instead of focusing on the aspects, which was everything that you described, focus on the one.
That's right.
The aspects take care of themselves. So you don't have to worry about attaining this, attaining that, by understanding the Atmas you were talking about, by going in and having the direct experience of the Atma. Everything that you've just described answers itself.
Yes. So how long is the trek between one shore to the other is up to each one. Now, some people take a lifetime to get there. It took me, I didn't think in these terms until I became about 38 or 40. And it took me a long time to go, okay, to build this kind of a verbalization within my mind, where it goes like, okay, this is reality thinking about itself. It took me 20 years. I don't know, maybe some people take 10, some people take 5. They say that a mind can enlighten, from birth. Based on my own experience, I don't think it's very probable. Is it possible? Yes. But what is more probable is that a mind, through a lot of thinking, a lot of pondering, a lot of hypothesizing, a lot of consilience of different knowledge from different people, arrives to this conclusion. I have never seen, let's put it this way, a mind that was not very complex, abstract, educated, super perspective.
I can't hear.
Did you mute me?
No, I hear you.
Okay, so it's Ken who can't hear right now. Ken, you must have done something to your phone. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
If you can hear me, nod your head. Okay, I can't hear you.
Well, something happened.
My phone is acting up. I can't hear what you're saying.
Your Atman became deaf.
Ken, I believe it's the connectivity in the room that you're in. Because
who is that?
The frame rate dropped.
That's Rami.
I didn't know Rami was with us.
Yes, Rami, welcome, Rami.
Welcome, Rami.
Are you
I was here from about 10 minutes or 15 minutes before Mike McKenna left. It's
Mike McKenna's gone.
Yeah.
I missed something in the memo.
5 minutes. Don't worry about your awareness features.
As you can see, I don't know everything, although I do believe that I know the nature of anything. Anyway, so, well, I am all out of fresh ideas here. As a matter of fact, I think I need to, yes?
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I'm back. Yeah, I lost audio. I'm sorry. I kind of missed that whole last part.
Gotcha. Well, I don't know where you lost your audio, but I think we both agree on the concept that the soul is the infinite knowledge of everything by everything, and the human knowledge, the human enlightenment, is a function to infinity of that actualization of the potential infinite knowledge of the whole regarding itself.
Both Ken and Luis are conciliating towards the same object.
Yeah, we're trying to describe.
They come from different fields of study, but it sounds to me like they're pointing to the same moon.
Yeah, the same reality. We are trying to express conventionally the transcendental. So basically, we're trying to express the soul, this concept of soul, which is infinite knowledge of everything by itself, regarding itself, in a more trivial, more conventional way, which is the human language.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you
six-dimensional concept? to a three-dimensional mind.
How do you describe the infinite through finite descriptions or words? But you can get very, very close to it. And of course, you have to kind of be very super perspective, very open-minded, very almost very disassembled in your mind in order to be able, as a mind, to understand infinity and eternity right there in one swoop. I always say that this kind of feeling is going through a wormhole where the actualized deactualizes itself and goes through there's a word for that donut, and you kind of from one side, which is actualized, the phenomenal world, you deconstruct yourself and the world. You go through the middle and you fizzle out, you disappear, you become a 100% potential, zero actualization. In a sense, you become like the zero Kelvin, and boop, you pop on the other side, quantumized, and then you become, the whole of reality, which then, as you reactualize, become a human consciousness in the real world, in the phenomenal world.
You just described a black hole.
Yes, a black hole is as a white hole. There's no doubt about it. So basically, it is possible, and in physics terms, we could consider the soul as a black hole that has all the information, infinite information, that pops. It has so much density that the space-time is broken. So space-time is broken, and boom, you have a white hole, which is what we describe as the Big Bang.
Or,
exactly.
Or sub-big bangs, or tiny big bangs.
I saw a note there by Rami saying, nope, I disagree. He just doesn't like that concept.
Oh, is there a chat?
There must be. I saw a note
I
there.
disagree. Rami disagrees. All right. Let's hear it.
Actually, there are 7 notes. Wait a minute. I missed that.
Oh,
How do we get to the notes? I'm new to this.
oh, there's a button at somewhere. Well, it might be different on a phone, but on the desktop there's a little a thing for chat, and it throws a panel to the right, and you can see what I'm writing.
Okay, I'm seeing it now.
Okay, so Mike disappeared. Yeah, I see that. I was actually taking a
I see
leak.
7.
A very quiet leak. I disappeared to go take a leak because I drank too much coffee this morning. And in the meantime, Mike disappeared, and Rami joined in. So I missed half the picture. So Rami, you disagree?
I see.
What's the deal? You disagree with this description?
Well, the soul is inherited. Right? There's no will. Rather, it is something which was imbued into the first human, whoever and whomever the first humans were. And what we have is the inheritance of that one human soul.
Do mosquitoes have a soul? Do they inherit a soul too?
If they do, then it would be their mosquito soul. Now, whether the human soul, remember, we're only using words here to differentiate between a human soul and mosquito soul. We could say single-celled organism's soul, and we could say that we all inherit that life, that force,
So if
the beginning of
Rami, if I change the word soul to self-awareness, and I did a function from 0 to infinity, would that also describe what you're saying, that every aspect of reality is endowed with some self-awareness that goes from 0 in a rock, for example, to infinity in an enlightened consciousness, human consciousness, for example?
I think it's unproven that awareness is something which exists in actuality. Awareness could be the effect of certain biological processes. So we like to think that we're aware. We act as though we're aware. We speak of awareness as it is an objective.
How can I get my beard like Ken's?
But even our consciousness themselves may be a reflection of something
that is so enlightened.
at its core, something biological.
Well, you could, yes, you could say it's biological, but you know, I like to kind of anthropomorphize self-awareness and just look at something that, like an instrument through which what is, which is reality as a whole, is able to be aware of itself with a certain degree of clarity. That way, I could feasibly hypothesize that a string, which is the vibration of nothingness, the first vibration of nothingness, of the empty space, could have a very tiny self-awareness. That means that reality could possibly see itself a little bit through a string, a little bit more through an atom, a little bit more through a molecule, a little bit more through a bucket of water, a little bit more through a leaf, a little bit more through a tree, a little bit more through a mosquito, and then a little bit more and more and more through a human mind, which is the more self-aware thing that we know of.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Whether it's the result of a biological process or whether it's a conceptual model. I mean, it sounds a very strong model. It's a very understandable model. It's a model to play with. It's good. But you also, on the other end of things, speak of infinity. Well, there are multiple infinities, and I don't think we've even reached the end of the first one. So when we think about ourselves as being potentially infinite or expressions of the infinite, I'm very quickly reminded that we have a beginning, we have an end. I don't know that the universe will exist beyond the span of time, but it seems that it would, though our form of consciousness of the universe may be superseded or extinguished.
Oh, that's for sure. Human self-awareness arises with the fetus and finishes with the death of that body. But the universal consciousness, which is unaware of itself, if it's not through one of these temporary consciousnesses, is infinite and eternal. I propose that reality, whether there is something or there is nothing, is still reality. So reality cannot but not exist, but exist.
There's something very what is the native religion to Japan?
Shinto.
Shinto. There's something very poetically Shinto about some of your words.
Uh-huh.
Well, Shinto ultimately goes back to India.
Yeah. To me, to be clear, I posit or I hypothesize that reality has no beginning and no end because reality exhibits two qualities or two aspects, which is being, anything different from zero, and non-being, which is zero. So it is, when I talk about reality, I'm not talking about things. Things are only aspects of reality. When I talk about reality, I talk about both things and no thing, that being 0 Kelvin. So, and that's, so whether it's something aspectualized or not, reality is. So that's, to me, it takes away the beginning and the end. Is there going to be a reality when all the galaxies disappear? And because when all the galaxies disappear, it's nothing but a big zero. I'll say, yeah, the reality will be there. It'll be a big zero.
Where are your explorations in non-duality?
The non-duality is only a aspectual consideration of what is. So there is one reality. To me, non-duality is saying that there's only one reality. no matter what it looks like, wherever you put your finger or your eye on or your ideas, there is reality. Reality is everywhere, nowhere, at the same time, and at no time. So basically, there is the only duality is precisely the aspectualization of the otherwise non-aspectual reality. The soul that Ken was talking about, without any actualization. But one thing that, and this was the eureka moment for me, guys. The eureka moment for this consciousness was the moment that I realized that nibbana, not being, or the cessation of anything, and samsara were two aspects of the same one thing. And of course, it looks really, really different. It appears very different. Zero appears very different from one, whatever that one looks like. But in reality, reality is both zero and one at the same time, concurrently, forever, wherever. That's the way I describe the whole of reality. And of course, that's a non-dual approach. Although I see duality in the aspect between 0 and 1, I do not see reality in the essence of reality, which a 0 and 1 are inherited from reality, the being, pure being. So I have both a non-dual and dual approach to reality. But at the end of the day, I only see one reality, whether I see anything in it or not.
And when you say it, what are you looking at?
Everything and nothing at the same time. So it is tat, the Vedanta.
Tatwam Asi?
Yeah, that's right. So tat, which is it, is 0, 1, infinity, or anything between. It is that. Is everything, nothing, everywhere, and nowhere at the same time, at no time, every time.
You know what you just described?
It.
You know what that it is?
It's everything and nothing at the same time.
You just described the soul.
Yes.
So I
can
you
give you
have
a name,
soul, by going in and merging with that soul.
I don't like calling it soul because people misunderstand. But it is kind of, what is it? Well, it is it, and it's everything and nothing. So I'd rather not use soul, spirit, the universal consciousness, or nothing, because it is much easier to talk about, although it is much more difficult to describe. But I don't like to use the word soul, although I understand exactly what you're talking about. When you say soul, I say it. And to me,
so
there are no connotations.
That you're talking about is within your body, correct?
All
living things have.
You see, Rami used a verb, a word that was very interesting. We inherit it. That means that it is in everything. And I mention Baum again, who says that reality is a hologram. No matter how small you cut it, there is the whole of reality in it. The smaller it is, the more potential, the more energy it is. Everything is in it. It's a non-actualized reality. So I like the word hologram in the sense actualization versus potential. But what you call soul, and Rami says that we inherit it, that is telling me that you both are talking about the same thing, which is reality is in everything, because reality is aspectualized in a ratio, in a certain ratio. How much energy, let's put it this way, how much aspect is there in a human being? How much aspect is there in a galaxy? How much aspect is there in a cluster of galaxies, etc., etc. So if you want, we could say that energy is aspectualization of it. And because we can measure aspect, but we cannot measure it. It's immeasurable.
I'd like to reframe what you just stated in a smaller scale. Everything that our mind can witness is an object, but our witnessing of it transforms it into a subject in our mind.
Right, Ken.
Yeah.
If you're moving around, go ahead and mute your phone because you were.
Oh, I muted him.
Okay, so go ahead, Rami. So everything a mind can represent, let's put it this way, of what is.
Right. So
you were saying that every mind is a representation.
We have our subjective understanding of that object. We'd always like to think that what we view or what we understand is the objective universe, but really it's a series of objects that our mind is constructing for us. And in that process, somehow, whether we want to or not, we're always attaching some level or degree of subjectivity to that. So I can speak of this subject, you can speak of that subject. The objective is not necessarily what we're experiencing or what we're explaining.
Correct.
We're always sort of reaching or grabbing or groping or.
Let me pause you there. Let me pause you. Don't lose the string of thought. Jairo, go ahead and share with Rami that little analysis of Boltzmann's concept of reality. And you will see in it, Rami, exactly what you just said, that the mind represents what is. So the mind is always kind of extracting aspects and ideas and things of the whole thing, of it. I think that's where you were going with this, right?
Well, actually, I wanted to explore the idea of territory. Because when you delve into, okay, I'm just going to watch. Oh, that's right, Boltzmann's concept of reality. Thank you.
If you read that, I think it's going to tell you exactly what you are talking about. How the mind represents the whole, and how many different ways you can represent it, and how you should be very super perspectivist in how you look at things, because the whole, it is really, really, really eternal and infinite. So how do you describe it? How do you represent it to yourself? By looking at the aspects of it, because you don't see the whole thing. You don't see the non-phenomenal side of reality, the non-aspectual side of reality, which is also always infinite, an infinite non-being. So what we see of reality, according to science, is about what, 5% of the whole energy of the universe? Because 5% is, atoms and stuff that we can measure, the phenomenal thing. And that includes our mind, how the visible side is able to look at it and measure and think about it. And then there's dark energy, dark matter, I'm sorry, which we don't see, but we know it's there because of the gravitational pull of nothing. We don't see anything, but we feel the gravitational pull. That's how galaxies, stay the way they are. And then there's a freaking amount of 75% of dark energy, which I suspect is the non-phenomenal, non-aspectual side of reality, which we don't even know what it is. But actually, when you think about it, it makes the universe expand. It's like a positive force instead of a negative force. So the yin yang that the yin yang represents very well my description of reality. The yin would be the dark, the non-being, non-phenomenal, non-aspectual, and the being, the yang, or the yin, I don't know which one I called it, is the phenomenal side of it. But they're both the same thing. They're not different. They look different. They feel different to our consciousness, but they are the same thing. And it's infinite too. So that yin yang, we see it as a circle, but the circle has no boundaries. It's everywhere, all the time, etc., etc. But those two qualities of being and non-being, nibbana, samsara, are easily distinguishable by a self-aware mind. I don't know if I derailed your train of thought, Rami.
It's all right. I'm also while while you're speaking, I'm reading and also contemplating while holding the prior concept. So I'm using my four-way neurons here.
Yeah. Anyway, so this conversation is very enriching because there are four minds talking about the unspeakable, the undescribable, the ineffable, and I think we are able to reach some consilience, some perspectivism, so we can talk about what is unspeakable and still agree a little bit of what we're looking at, which we don't see, we can't feel it, we can't touch it, we can't measure it. It's like Kant was talking about the noumenon and phenomena. Actually, he was talking also about noumena. And there I disagree because I would lump everything, any non-being, any non-phenomenal, non-describable, as part of the yin of reality. So I cannot imagine being able to cut whatever is not cuttable. So just like you cannot cut. Yes.
My favorite sentence in this paragraph is after 3.1. Says scientific theory can and almost surely will one day be replaced by another. Within the realm of this aspect, you could write volumes of dramas. It's the base, because with an understanding comes a politic, and with a politic you have these established territories, and with these territories you have people willing to fight, which is always conflict is the meat and potatoes of a really good story. So I'm curious to know, does this, or do you have a political mind, or is this merely, are you giving the I don't even know if I would be using the correct word, a vanyana about your approach?
No, that's a beautiful question, Rami, because I will summarize this by saying that the secret of happiness, the secret to happiness of each individual mind is deliberate action. So this that I talk about, this abstract, subtle, ineffable, zero becoming one, one becoming zero, zero being one, one being zero, the aspectual side of reality, phenomena versus noumenon, and everything, I always take it down to the a phenomenal reality. You and I, how we talk, how we cooperate, how we collaborate, how we build and create together. So to me, these conversations that are not taken to the political, I would say the hygienic side of reality, what I eat, how I eat, the exercise I do, how do I get along with you guys, how I pay my bills, how I work, how I live in society, the individual versus the collective. If I don't have this kind of trickle-down effect, then it's completely sterile. So yes, I have a political mind that applies these nonsensical, abstract, ineffable ramblings about the nature of reality into how do I live my life in the conventional sense, from the conventional perspective. So I'm very political. I have very strong, or at least I have very clear ideas what politics should be. I analyze very, very closely the social contract. There are three thinkers that talked about the social contract. Well, I'm going to be the fourth one. I see the very, very importance of the social contract, how the individual connects to the collective and how the collective connects to the individual. And I create a yin yang in there. What is my responsibility, my civic responsibility as an individual towards the collective that I belong to, that I play in? I'm in a game of soccer. I have to play by the rules, but also I'm a thinking player. So I could say, hey, this rule here is not right. We should change this rule to make the game better. So I think very, very deeply about my responsibility as an individual within the collective. And I see on the other side the liability of the collective, the responsibility of the collective towards the individual. how do we marry that, and how do we create a politics, a rule of the game where the collective gets better while the individual gets better within the collective. They both, grow and become better and happier. So yes, that your question is very important to me, because at the end of the day, talking about the quantum nature of reality and defining the soul as a degree of self-awareness of the aspectual side of reality, if we are not humanly happy and thriving and sharing and growing together, we don't have a culture. Culture is very important. If we don't understand that we are, you are me, I am you, we need to cooperate, collaborate, and build an environment that is sustainable and clean and pleasant, and that helps us thrive and grow and be happier and be enlightened, all of us. And then this is wasting time. I hope I didn't misunderstand your question.
We're on target.
Okay. I believe. I was telling Ken before. I don't know if you heard my analogy, but I believe that knowledge has two aspects, just like reality has two aspects: the non-phenomenal and phenomenal. Knowledge has two aspects: the conventional knowledge. You and I talking about how we should plant tomatoes and what time of the year, and the non-conventional one, which is applying these ideas about the nature of reality, the soul, and et cetera, and combining those in a Concilian way to create growth and happiness. Sukha instead of dukkha. To go from dukkha, which is stress and suffering, to sukha, which is well-being, health, and growth, but sustainable growth, not ignorant growth. And that is the beauty of, at least in my view, of this kind of conversation. And that's what I would like to build. I have a website. www.trickledownwisdom.com, where I kind of throw at the reader this combination of conventional and non-conventional wisdom and knowledge. I talk about a transversal way of thinking, which combines both to the betterment of the individual and of humanity as a whole. That would be my school of thought. It's like, hey, let's build something beautiful at the combination, from the combination of conventional and transcendental knowledge.
Thank you for your time this morning, and thank you for Boltzmann.
Yeah, I found him a couple of days ago. I'm always looking for something interesting, and now I need to detach. I need to go, but I found this Zoom session extremely.
Let's do it again next weekend.
I'm so glad you.
Isn't it? The 4th of July.
Yes, I'm so glad you recorded this, Jairo, because many times, many conversations that I have.
Podcast.
I think this is a beautiful one to share out there, because we went from zero to infinity, and we ended up in politics, or at least the idea of politics. What do we do with all this beautiful knowledge of the soul?
So next week it will be on the politics of freedom.
I am, if I can, I think I'm gonna, if you can copy me or give me the link to it, I'm gonna post it on LinkedIn. Okay. LinkedIn is one of those where I try to, I have quite a few contacts in Europe, in Spain, because that's where I come from. And there's a lot of suffering out there now with the pandemic and the economy, and a lot of people suffering and trying to find out what the hell is going on. And if you don't mind, I would like to share this very long Zoom conversation on LinkedIn.
Oh, okay. I could turn this conversation into a podcast, and I'll send you the link of this episode.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind, I would like to put it on trickledownwisdom.com. Also,
Okay.
for whoever may want to know what the trickling down of transcendental wisdom to the human level and how it works. And this is all this conversation
The
was
trickle
about.
down wisdom sounds so elitist. Maybe you need a guru. Maybe you need a Luis Del Pino guru to receive it.
You know, at the end of the day, the knowledge of reality regarding itself is very subtle. It just doesn't happen really easy. And that's why I think that although enlightenment or auto enlightenment, you know, like instantaneous enlightenment is possible, I find it very improbable, because you have to put a lot of things together in order for reality to see itself in its splendor, in its infinity and eternity. And that is too abstract for at least to consider that like a feeling of the oceanic feeling and all that. Yeah, you can have those feelings, but the true moment of reality seeing itself perfectly through cognition, logic, science, and the feelings that come with it, because of course enlightenment is very pleasant. Nirvana or nibbana is very pleasant, is sukha, but it comes with a lot of intricate abstract notions that I don't believe that happen like that very easily at the human consciousness level. That's my take on that. Enlightenment takes work. That's what I say.
Well, you see, what I look at it as enlightenment, you know, enlightenment. I look at it more as enlightenment, enlightenment.
Yeah.
In other words, what you're describing is as being able to not be understood is if you take again that approaching it through the aspects instead of the one. Of course, it's going to take time. Of course, it's going to be difficult to understand. Of course, it might take lifetime after lifetime after lifetime to get to a certain level of understanding. Yes. Whereas if you take and focus on the one, which is the Atma, we focus on the soul and merging with the soul and having the direct experience, everything that you described becomes answered in one fell swoop.
The Atma is Luis Del Pino's reality, seeing, being able to use our tools to see itself.
What I agree with you, Ken. The problem that I see there is that Brahman cannot understand itself but through Atman. And Atman is typically very ignorant. If you look at the Paticca Samuppada, I'm sure you have read it.
The individual Atma?
Yeah, each individual consciousness has to grow out of something. You don't have a baby that comes out like a freaking Einstein or a Boltzmann. It just doesn't happen. There's no instantaneous conventional knowledge. And because transcendental knowledge is built upon conventional knowledge, I cannot see the going from the bottom of the Maslow's pyramid to the top of it, which is self-transcendence or self-unification of reality with itself, happening in an automatic way.
It can if you see the top and the bottom as one.
Yes, it can.
As one,
potentially.
So there is no gap between the two. If you understand,
there is no gap. Essentially, there is no gap. You're absolutely right, Ken. But there is no gap. But the no gap has to be somehow put together with a gap, which is conventional self-awareness, conventional
That's again
consciousness.
Approaching through the mind. That's again approaching everything through the mind.
The thing is, we can hypothesize that reality could possibly know itself without an instrument, but I don't see it, and because we don't see it, maybe it's a hypothesis that is possible, but we cannot realize, potentialize, or actualize, and that means that the probability of it is very, very small. Like there may be a unicorn on the other side of the moon, possibly, but the probability of that is infinitely small. So what I say is that automatic or instantaneous enlightenment of reality, seeing itself clearly without its other side, because that what you're saying there is that the non-phenomenal side of reality can know itself. And then in that sense, we are disagreeing on what knowledge, conventional knowledge is or transcendental knowledge is. Because then you're making a distinction, a separation between not being and being. The non-phenomenal.
Only the mind, but see, it's only the mind that makes that distinction. It's not the self. What you're talking about is it's only the mind that creates that distinction and that separateness, the illusion of separateness. You see, the thing is, my experience when I was in India, and Jairo knows the Mahatma Fakiranandji initiated me into what they call the Apara Vidya. He opened the third eye. And when I talk about the practical experience of the Atma, that's what I had. And
how
I
come
understood.
you didn't have that experience of a third eye before?
Huh? Excuse me, say it again.
How come you did not have that experience of a third eye before?
Mm-hmm. Because my karmas were not ready or resolved in order for me to be able to receive that knowledge. In other words, if I had received that knowledge before, it would have meant nothing. It would have been something like a fad and just taken and gotten away.
So what you're saying is that if reality was able to open its own third eye without karma, it would not understand what it was talking about, because it would not understand karma. So it would be like, what the hell is this?
Well, one thing the thing was what I understood is at that moment that the I, when we talked, remember when I asked you, when you say I, me, who are you talking about? Yeah, I understood that the I was not here or not this body. I understood that the I was the soul. That is correct. And no understanding was necessary, because everything that you were looking for, I understood in that moment, I already had.
But if you had not understood before, you would not understand what you were understanding then. So what we are, I think we're going to agree on this, is that although possibly reality could know itself directly and go, it is it, and this is it thinking, it takes a non-knowledge, an ignorance, in order to understand full understanding. Because you cannot separate understanding and non-understanding, because if you do, then you don't know what it is to understand. And that's why I believe that there's a certain connection between ignorance and enlightenment, and it cannot be understood separately, because one doesn't make sense without the other. So again, if reality were able to feel itself directly, but did not understand what it felt like before feeling itself directly, it would not know what it's experiencing.
Mm-hmm. So, well, see, my experience was, when you're addressing exactly what you're saying, it wasn't an understanding that came upon me.
It was a being. It was an experience.
It was a lifting of a veil.
Yeah, a direct
and then that understanding was already there. I no longer had to search.
But if you, at the moment of being a superconductor, where reality sees itself without any veil, any spots, the lens is completely clear. Actually, there's no lens. Reality is a direct experience. It implies that in order to have this direct experience, it has to have the previous experience of not having that direct connection. It cannot separate one from the other. That's what I'm trying to hypothesize here. Because in the end, how do we know? How do we know what it is to feel without feeling? So,
well, you see, in the end, there is no end. That's the thing.
Of course.
There is no end. It goes on and on and on and on. So the understanding of that there is no end, to me, and I'm just talking about my own personal experience, to me, that's all I need. I don't need to try to understand this. I don't need to try to quantify that. I don't need to try to explain this, because I understand that it's infinite and goes on and on and on. So eventually, those who don't understand will come to understand.
What I am trying to, and I agree with you, there's no end, there's no beginning, so what's the point? The point is that if you don't know conventionally, that there is no end and no beginning, in conventional terms, then you cannot somehow, that's what I postulate, reality is not able to be itself directly, like a tooth cannot bite itself. Let's put it that way. It needs another tooth to bite onto something. So the pure being is unaware of its own being. And if it was not through this going to this direct experience, it doesn't make any difference, because at the point where reality experiences itself directly, there is no knowing, there is no thinking, there is no nothing, there's direct experience. So it takes a little bit of 100% pure being in order to know, hey, I am being. See, that's what I'm trying to say.
I totally get what you're saying.
It takes a little bit of ignorance. It takes a little bit of ignorance to somehow intuit, because it's an intuition. It's not an understanding. It's a direct being of non-ignorance, which is panya, absolute wisdom. And so one cannot be without the other. That's what I'm saying. Now, how long that distance is between 0 and 1, how difficult it is to get to, that panya, that samadhi, that direct experience coming from a non-direct experience. I suspect that it takes lifetimes. Like you see, it takes lifetimes. It's always happening in a sense. So basically, each individual consciousness is a chance for reality to experience itself directly, but it does that one consciousness at a time. That means one ignorance at a time. That's my hypothesis, at least. And the fact that this consciousness is aware of that there is a direct experience of reality, the fact that this consciousness can say, I am the whole of reality, talking about itself right now, that carries a lot of weight. And without this mind thinking that very deep, direct experience would be lost, because reality does not know. So I am the instrument through which reality is able to feel like I am every freaking thing and nothing at the same time. Isn't that beautiful? Reality cannot do that without this consciousness. And I am it thinking about itself. So the moment that I don't have an identity about myself, I know Atman is Brahman, Brahman is Atman. This is the whole thinking about itself with this very subtle abstraction. That's the beauty of it. The more you get, the closer you get to non-being. That's the absolute being. Brahman is non-being, but the being is the aspect of Brahman. So the closer ignorance comes to non-being, so that avidya becomes vidya, it becomes panya. That experience, the very point, the getting to the other shore, is that incredible sense of oh my.
We're in total agreement. But I'm saying that journey that you described is going within towards yourself.
Yes,
that's the only thing I'm saying.
So there's how long it takes. Yeah. How long it takes to get to that point that's where I think that it takes time. It just doesn't happen like that. I mean, some people
that depends on karmas. That depends on what your soul needs to go through and learn in order.
When you went to India and you were presented with those concepts, and all of a sudden, the light bulb went off. That was instantaneous. But there was a trip before that, where the light was not lit up.
No, you see, that's what I learned. The only thing that changed was my perception that it wasn't off and then it was on.
I know.
I realized that it was always on.
I know.
And the only thing that changed was my perception of that.
Yes.
And when I say perception, I'm talking about the mental perception.
Yes. But reality is always on.
Yeah, exactly.
The soul is always, but it doesn't know it. It doesn't know it.
You see, I say that the soul does know it. It's the mind that doesn't know it. And you see, and when you and the thing is, the mind is a necessary tool.
All right, let's rephrase this. Let's rephrase it. The mind knows it if the mind knows it. The soul knows it if the mind knows it. So it goes together. The soul does not know unless its mind, because it's the mind of the soul, knows it. So it goes together. Because here, transcendentally, the soul does not know. The soul is, but it doesn't know it, and it's through the mind that it is able to discover itself. That's why you know yourself. You go in, know thyself. The reality is knowing itself through its own mind. But it needs the mind to know itself. And this mind has to change from very ignorant to extremely subtle and enlightened in order for the reality to become one. So we are talking about the same thing, absolutely. So it happens all the time, and it's been happening for infinity and eternity. This yin yang is eternal. So,
I agree with that.
So reality is it, but it doesn't know it. And every so often, like the turtle, coming out to breathe and putting the head through the buoy. I think that description is a little bit in my favor. That reality knows itself 100% only through a few little minds. That's what I think. Because if it were the case, then everybody around us would be enlightened. We could talk about this at Walmart, and everybody would understand what we're saying.
Everybody is enlightened. Like I said, the only difference is that the veil is down. They just don't know that they are enlightened. They just don't know that.
Let's put it this way: that if enlightenment is the soul itself, that's an identity, then it doesn't know that reality doesn't know itself clearly through every mind. So that's the thing. This every mind assumes that there's the work to be done. It just doesn't happen like that. There are billions of people, but reality only knows itself very clearly through a few minds. I think we can agree on that.
Oh, I don't disagree with anything you said. I'm just saying if that approach works for you, that's absolutely fine. Keep going.
It works for me.
Knock yourself out. Yeah, exactly.
Through this
mind,
reality is extremely heavy.
Yeah. So that's like I said, like I said, I their own. Any approach that resonates with you and you follow, no matter what that approach is. Like I gave the analogy of my friend who struggled with addiction, found Jesus, found the church, completely turned his life around. What's wrong with that? Nothing. That's right, because that's where he's supposed to be. So anyway, like I said, God bless you, knock yourself out. If that's how you want to see things and present it, and you can help people along their path, God bless you, more power to you. It's not about, that it's not about right or wrong. You see, it's not about which way is better, which way is that. It's like which way works. And that can only come down to where an individual is at, how I see it, karmically. Because like I said, the aha moment I had was the fact that everything I've been looking for, I already had. I felt like Dorothy with the slippers at the end of Wizard of Oz. There's no place like home. Home being the Atma, home being the soul. You always had the way home, you see? So if that's just the way I look at it and I see it and I present it. If that resonates with people, fine. If it doesn't,
absolutely.
Fine. That being said, brother, I really appreciate this talking. I'll see you next week. I got to go clean a Confederate cemetery.
Listen, guys, it was
coming,
very enjoyable. Thank you, everybody. Jairo, make sure that you share the link. And that you share the link so we can share it up there for Brahman to see.
It was good.
Thank you very much. I'm out of here.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
That was pretty good, Jairo. Good.
Yes.
Bunch of.
Yeah, so you can check out the links in the chat.
I'm going to save the chat right now. We'll click on the last thing I just showed. Woo!
Right. It's still on. Now he's gone.
And you've put new things in, so this is wonderful. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, I created a little podcast. And look up how to log in though with my password, so I recovered reset my password from the browser, but it's on my phone.
And I know you've got some material between May 31st and June 27th.
Oh, I do?
You do, because you've been holding these almost every Saturday morning.
Oh yes, I should put this on the. Next Saturdays I should put this on Central Florida also. I put it on Buddhism for Happiness.
And he's linked in the discussion area. I have to take my mother to an appointment. It was very good seeing your face and
thank you.
Part of this. Thank
for
you very much.
joining us for another Saturday morning live.
You wasted all that time.
Another 2 hours wasted.
Have a great rest of your day.
Come on.
Bye.